If I was a politician, here's what I would do to help first-time buyers get on the property ladder. I wonder why the government haven't implemented some of these schemes that I'm going to talk about in order to help first-time buyers actually get on a property ladder. So forget about the finer details, because I'm not a politician and it's just an idea that I think would help so many people. You guys can work out the practicalities and the ins and outs. So here are 3 things that I would propose if I was in government. So the first thing would be something I would call an employee deposit scheme, so an EDS. Now, an employee deposit scheme would be where employers, company that's been around for a lot of time, that has cash in the bank, that is a viable business with lots of employees and got a good turnover, good profit ratio, where they take some money from their business and they lend it to the employee, and they're able to get that money back from the employee through salary. Let me give you a better working understanding of it. Let's say the average property price in the UK is around 287. Let's use £280,000. In order to buy a £280,000 property, a first-time buyer would typically have to put down a 10% deposit, which means they would have to put down £28,000. But I would suggest that if any employer is going to implement this scheme in their organization, they shouldn't lend the employee 100% of the deposit. I think it's important that anyone that wants to buy a property has to have some level of money, some level of investment, and some level of risk also, which implies that they have to put some money into this. So I believe that the loan should be given to certain employees, not all employees. There's got to be a criteria. You've got to pass the criteria, which means maybe you're on a certain salary, you're on a certain band, you're a certain industry, certain sector, certain level in the organization. But more importantly, you've been at the company for more than 3 to 5 to 10 years. If you're brand new to the company, you should not be able to utilize this scheme. I say this for a specific reason, because we've got to find a way to entice the organization to take this risk and to take this gamble, and to also support their employees. We want to put forward the business case to the employers so that it seems and it comes across as a viable option to retain amazing staff. Now, this is what most companies care about. You hire correctly, it costs you thousands of pounds to hire. You hope and you pray your employees stay with you for as long as possible. This will be an avenue to encourage your employees to stay and become dedicated and more dedicated to the business. Now, this is how it works. You loan 50% of the value of that person's deposits. So in this case here, let's do the numbers. If someone needed to buy a £280,000 property, their deposit will be £28,000 minus all the other costs such as solicitors, brokers, so and so. You will front them £14,000, which is 50% of the deposit needed to buy that property. What you will then do is then recoup that loan, no interest on that loan, because remember, you're getting the benefit of encouraging your employees to stay in your organization, to not have to go and find another job or maybe push for a pay rise in another organization because they want to get on the property ladder. So no interest on this loan. You will lend them £14,000, but you will recoup that £14,000 through salary. So if someone's on £30,000 a year, or on their £50,000 a year, or on their £100,000 a year, whatever the amount, obviously, again, for this to work, it's got to be employees on a certain amount every single year. Maybe employees that are on 35 to maybe £40,000. Those are the people that really typically need it. I know many people need it, but again, this idea is to help most people get on the property ladder. It's got to help the people also at the lower end of the salary scale. So you would lend £14,000 to your employees. Let me get my calculator. And it's in your best interest as an employer to lend this money for a longer period of time. Now, of course, while I get the calculator out, you've also got to figure out what are the consequences of somebody leaving the organization. How do they pay back that loan? Or do you then pass that loan on to their new employer, and the new employer takes that from their salary and pays it back to you? Again, that's the nuts and bolts that you've got to deal with. So if you're going to lend somebody £14,000, do it based on 3 years, so at 36 months. So based on lending someone £14,000 across 3 years, you're going to be removing £388 per month from their salary. So at the end of the 3 years, they would have paid you back and everything is fine. You have no lien, you have no loan, you have no charge on that property. Just remember that you're doing this to help your employees get from here to here, which is get from not being able to get on a property ladder and always seek an alternative to get cheaper accommodation or to get a pay rise, and they will leave your company. So that's one option I would consider. If you were to consider it to do it over a 5-year period, then your employees are going to be paying £14,000 divided by 60 means your employees will be paying you £233 every single month to pay back that interest-free loan. So there are a number of reasons why I think it would be enticing to make it an interest-free loan, simply because you don't want it to come across as if you are charging your employees for the privilege of them owning a house. But number two, there are certain religious groups that will not be able to take advantage or benefit from a scheme like this if there is interest charged on it. So that's something to take into consideration. £14,000 to a larger organisation, and I'm really surprised people like Google, Facebook, Amazon operating in the UK are not offering loans like this or offering employee deposit schemes like this when they have so much cash in the bank, but they also know that they have a retention issue. Now, it's not solely and it's not really the employer's responsibility, but if you want to retain good talent, you've got to ask your employees what they're struggling with. Giving them gym access is amazing, giving them childcare is amazing, but many people would love to be able to get on the property ladder. Hey guys, make sure you subscribe so you hear some more of my crazy ideas and helping people get on the property ladder or becoming property investors. So this leads into the second point. If I was running for government and trying to help first-time buyers get on the property ladder, I would introduce something called a RRS, which is called the Rent Referral Scheme, where I would take the data and I would take the track record of previous renters and encourage the banks to change their affordability criteria. Now, we've got to face the reality that many people can't get on a property ladder because number one, they don't have the deposit, and that's where the EDS steps in. But many people do have the deposit, but they will never be able to pass the affordability criteria because their salary or the job that they're in will never allow them to meet the current affordability criteria. Now, in the UK, you will be lucky if you get 4, maybe 4.5 times your salary in order to buy a property. So if you wanted to buy a property at the average of, let's say, £280,000 in the UK, you need to have a salary of around £60,000. Now, the reason why the bank is asking for that is they want to believe and they want evidence that you will be able to make your monthly payments every single month and pay the mortgage. At the end of the day, they are a business and they need to protect their investment. So what I would introduce is the RRS, Rent Referencing Scheme, where politicians, where people approach the banks and say, hey, your current system of determining whether somebody has the capability to pay a mortgage on a monthly basis is outdated and is unfair. So what we should do is, if someone has been paying rent consistently over the last 3 years with no missed payments, with no defaults, we should be able to take that information, that data, hand it over to the bank to say, hey, look, someone's been paying £1,500 per month in rent for the last 3 years. They've never missed a payment. Can we take this information and add it somewhat into the affordability calculator to say that this person is a good bet, they're a sure bet? Because I promise you, anyone that's making £1,500 a month in rent payment can afford to pay £1,000 per month in a home that's theirs, where they have ownership and they have protection and they have security and have responsibility over. So a rent reference scheme will help a lot of people indicate to a bank that they are credible and they are worthy and they're able to pay their responsibilities every single month, which is effectively what the bank want to know. We've got to ask ourselves a question: why are politicians not doing more to get people on the property ladder? And the truth is, they don't care. And I can give you a reason why they don't care. And this is the third thing that I would implement if I was a politician or if I was the government and I was trying to help people get on the property ladder. I would introduce a government backing loan system, similar to when we went through lockdown and the government got really scared and they panicked and they said, oh my God, small businesses that stabilize the economy are all going to falter because no one can go out and no one is buying from small businesses. So they went to the banks. So this is direct evidence that the government have relationships and conversations and communication with the banks, and the government effectively said to the banks, hey, let people self-certify, let people tell you what their turnover is and lend them up to £50,000 in order to look after them and balance that business for a period of time. And then here's the interest rate that they should be paying, which is a low amount in comparison to going to a bank and taking out a loan otherwise. Take this money and put it into your business. Why can't the UK government introduce a similar scheme where the government back up these loans as they did with the bounce back loans? They can go to some of these banks and of course they can check your track record. Now, I think it's important to kind of put in place some criteria And this should only be for people who have a long-standing employment track record. So if you're unemployed, unfortunately, this isn't going to work for you. I don't think any of these schemes will work for you, but it's for people who have a career, people who are at a certain place and ready to buy. I also don't believe that if you don't have the money to buy, there is no system in place to help you buy, because therefore that's just giving you a handout. These are supports to allow certain people at certain stages to be able to get on the property ladder. So this government-backed loan, similar to the bounce-back loan, should be implemented by the government going to the banks and saying, hey, look at this person's employment track record. The banks, you put up the money. If this person defaults on any level, which means the banks can reduce their lending criteria. Again, the evidence is there with regards to the bounce-back loans. The banks removed their lending criteria. It was simply a form that you filled out and you said, hey, my turnover is £200,000, therefore give me £50,000 to balance up my business or to put into my business. The government can introduce a similar scheme where people say, this is my employment, and then they've got their contracts. They can even check with their employers and double check with their employers to make sure this person actually has a job. And then the banks should say, hey, you've been employed for a period of time. We believe that you're going to be able to pay the money. If you don't pay the money, don't worry about it. The government will step in and support. Now, many people say, where would the government get the money from? The reality is the government will find the money. This scheme is not going to be applicable to every single employee and every single person in the UK, but for the people that fit the certain criteria. Now, again, I have no intention of becoming a politician. These are just ideas. Hey guys, if you got any value from this video, even if you think the ideas are absolutely crazy, or if you've got any suggestions that might actually make this work, feel free to pop it in the comment section.